So this brings me to, I guess, three things that I sort of want to hammer home and that I hope are useful in terms of, I think, moving towards the future. The one, it was hinted at by Dan earlier, but it's open standards. And by open standards, we mean not only standards that allow people to share content. That's one element of open standards. The other element of open standards was when we're talking about fancy XML. XML is an open standard in the sense that anything that's created in XML format, even when XML doesn't work anymore, there'll be a time when it quote-unquote doesn't work, but it's a format that's transferable. You can create a pathfinder from one to another. Great example of that, in the library world, we have something called MARC records, which are machine-readable cataloging. These MARC records have been around since the 1960s. They used to be on punch cards when computers were on punch cards. If you look at a MARC file today, it's still written like it's on a punch card. And this is the format that library books still come in. Now, that being said, the programs today that use all the other various languages, C++, Java, or web-based programs, they don't read it in MARC. They have a converter that goes from MARC to whatever language that they're using. And so as long as you are adhering to a particular standard of coding, whatever standard that is, and there are standards, something can be transitioned from one form to another. So it's not so, yes, when this happens, as Justin said earlier, when this next technology comes, it's fine. There will need to be a transition for it, but it's not a rewrite of everything. It's a transition. So that's the first thing. The second thing is focusing on teacher training, both in the sense of how do they use these tools, how do they implement these tools, how do they focus on these tools, but not only, again, what's out there, so that's part of it, but also the other problem, I think, is training people to do this. That is not just simply use content, but to be in a position where they can create content. There is and again, this is happening very slowly in the secular world, but it will happen even more glacially in the Jewish, and I don't think it has to. But there are beginning to sprout up, I mean, the first program was Stanford in 1996 that has a sort of education and technology program. There doesn't necessarily need to be a full-fledged education technology program, but there's no reason that there can't be a certificate program either online or at Hebrew College or at JCS or at HEC or at Yeshiva University. There's no reason why a course like that can't exist to to talk about the issues of technology generally and specific tools maybe that exist there. And the third one sort of ties in with something that Dan was talking about earlier, what Meredith was talking about earlier, is for people who are out there doing this, there needs to be an opportunity to one, grow these tools for the sake of everyone, and to have an opportunity to develop sort of communally. And so whether it's a good example, or maybe not a good example, but a good example is that a number of Jewish organizations have people who do technology in some form. Sometimes it's web design, it's education, sometimes it's whatever it is. And what happens is that when these people create things, oftentimes they're used internally, or maybe that single organization will outsource their services to another organization. So you have JDub designing an interface for one of the Federation pages. Fine, so it's good, that's useful, this is a way for them to gain their money, for them to fundraise. What if there was a meta organization that had these techies under one roof that were then responsible for not only fitting the needs of all the Jewish organizations who might pay into this pool to create this content, but the content that created from that was then part and parcel of the Jewish community. Anyone can do whatever they want with it, for-profit, not-for-profit, whatever. That content is community. And so I think, and what you can do is then on top of that, in addition to meeting all these people's needs, you do the Google model. You give them 10% of their time to work on their own projects. That again, are part and parcel of the community, but that are their own projects that then have this opportunity to do so. And whether this is, as Meredith suggested, a fellowship, or in an ideal world, I would say this is actually a freestanding thing in and of itself that exists and continues to operate constantly with the time to continue to build your pool of these people. That I think is something that might be useful and interesting, and I'll throw all that out there. So,
thank you, Russell. Sure.